After Killers, I guess David Michael Latt wanted a short return to corny comedies like his first movie, but he was busy focusing on his new film company/distribution service, so he tossed some money the way of a friend and contributor to the Asylum's early work and told him to make something like their last collaboration. What came of that is the 1998 movie Social Intercourse. Yes, I know what that sounds like. No, it's not. This is a low-key party movie, possibly the indiest of indie films tied to the Asylum, as well as the most 90s movie featured so far. I know I kept giving Sorority House Party that title, but that was the most turn-of-the-decade 90s movie. The 90s trying to shake off the remnants of the 80s with their smooth, polished parties, pop ballads, and power muscle men that never wore shirts. This is the more recognizably 90s culture movie. The post-Nirvana, post-Clerks, post-MTV revival era of media, where things started getting cynical, stupid, ugly, more down-to-earth, unlike the previous decade of overproduction. These are the years where if you drove a rusty Suburban, wore an unbuttoned dress shirt over a stained undershirt, and knew enough HTML to code your own webpage, you were the sexiest man alive. At least that's what media tells me. I was 6 at the time. But this is where the barriers to entry for widespread distribution really started to break down, and any idiot with a camera had a chance to earn shelf space at Hollywood Video. And this movie is a crowning example of that era's attitude towards filmmaking, as well as media in general. What do I mean? Let's start from the beginning. Todd is a shy, self-loathing computer nerd social shut-in, who somehow has a legion of supportive friends, all of whom want him to get out and start dating again after his messy breakup with his last girlfriend. One night, Todd and his roommate Aaron are invited to a party thrown by their friends Kat and Rick, who have basically invited the entire neighborhood to their shindig. Todd reluctantly agrees, intending to duck out early, but ends up staying and having a relatively good time. But things get even more awkward when his ex and her fiancé also show up to the party. Can Todd keep his cool while dealing with the pressure from his friends and his ex? With how many arcs this movie juggles will we remember he's even in this movie? Right away, I have to apologize for giving the impression that this movie has a plot, because it doesn't. Okay, there's some kind of connective tissue here, hence how I could put together a summary, but story isn't exactly this movie's focus. I think somebody quickly scribbled a script on the back of a napkin, and that gave the movie maybe a good 10 minutes of material to work with, and the rest of the runtime were treated to stuff. Yeah, just stuff. It's a movie about a party, and it certainly feels like being at a party. I assume. I've never been invited to a party in my life. We get to see the event from the minute the guests arrive to when the stragglers have to be forcibly booted out, and all the fun stuff in between. The games, the drinking, the dares, the awkward anecdotes, the pickups, the nosy hostess, the smoking pot in the garage with the navel-gazing that follows, and even the bailing out of a friend who got drunk and decided to harass a police officer. Everything good, bad, and hilarious in hindsight is here, all held together by a diverse cast of party guests. And this is what I was talking about earlier with indie films in the second half of the 90s. It's a very unconventional movie, relying less on interesting story ideas and tightly based plots and more on characters and settings you'd probably see in real life. It's American Graffiti, or Lost in Translation, or Smoke, or the aforementioned Clerks, or that Comic-Con movie Mark Hamill made. It feels less like a movie you'd see in theaters and more an event somebody casually recorded on a camera, then transferred to VHS and popped on the shelves at Blockbuster. It's less concerned with pleasing demographics and more replicating an experience for its audience to find meaning and entertainment in. And while I probably sounded sarcastic in the opening, I have no problem with this kind of filmmaking. Even today, this format is pretty rare and almost exclusively relegated to the low to no budget indie scene. So whenever it pops up, and it's done right, it's an interesting watch. A sort of natural experience, like a scripted peek backstage or behind-the-scenes documentary. It's not tightly plotted, nothing is trying to attract attention, your attention is just drawn to it the same way an event happening live in front of you would. Personally, I like these, let's call them anti-movies. I don't feel forced to follow along with the action, or that it's trying to pander to what it thinks my demographic is into. I feel like I found someone having a party, pulled up a lawn chair, and I'm watching the natural chaos unfold, which quite often can prove better than TV. Obviously, I like regular movies as well. I'm not some avant-garde hipster, but for the occasional change of pace, these anti-movies are fun to watch. Since the movie doesn't have a conventional plot or focus, it's reliant on its characters to fill out the runtime. And there are a lot of characters. So many that it's easy to get lost in the sea of arcs that hold this movie together. Some characters do get a good amount of screen time, but some are only on screen for a few seconds. Or are they? There are so many faces, they might have popped up again somewhere. I tried. I really tried to follow them all, but I only remember a few names and even fewer faces, so if I end up pulling another Killers and getting characters mixed up, I apologize. With that said, the characters and subplots I was able to follow along with were entertaining. There's this couple that does nothing but argue. There are these two people who stand at the chip and dip and argue in non sequiturs. There's this tattoo guy who, all throughout the movie, tries to give the guests lavish tattoos. There's this homophobe who I swear is the love child of Quentin Tarantino and Mo Howard, who believes he's been abducted and stuck in a virtual reality being studied by aliens and ends up smoking pot with and befriending a gay guy. There's a guy with a camcorder who does nothing but record the party, and the footage is available as a DVD extra. There's this underage girl who was dragged to the party by her brother and who wants nothing to do with the rest of the action, which, yeah, speaking of relatable. There's a lesbian couple who will gladly kiss each other if a horny man pays them, and they get another lesbian to open up about her sexuality. And then, there are my two favorite arcs. The first features these two antisocial nerds who just want to play chess and LAN-based computer gaming, but Kat constantly interrupts their games and tells them to mingle and have fun. Without anything else to do, one keeps betting the other that every woman he talks to at the party will bring up her boyfriend or spouse, and lo and behold, that man is made very rich. Until he happens across the one woman at the party who's not in a relationship, and who's just as much a pretentious intellectual as he is. He loses the bet, but gets nookie, so he wins in the end. And the second features Aaron. Now, Aaron is the one who convinces Todd to go to the party, and he seems the most level-headed of the duo. Until he goes too far with the lava pepper eating contest, resulting in him having to drink every beer in sight. From there, he just gets more and more chaotic until his friends end up having to post bail at the end of the night. I'm not even gonna go into half the things he does, just trust me when I say he alone is worth the price of the DVD. And then we're suddenly hit with a subplot about a victim of date rape while her rapist tries to seduce the underage girl. On the plus side, he gets his ass kicked, but wow, talk about something soaring out of left field. It's not total tonal whiplash, the movie doesn't exactly establish itself as a lighthearted slapstick comedy, but it's immediately preceded by one of the nerds trying and failing to get a date, and then immediately followed by the discovery of the identity of a water balloon sniper. And for the rest of the movie, the tone just starts flipping back and forth between funny and super serious, like a hyperactive 5-year-old at a light switch. Up until this point, the scenes, despite the erratic editing, did feel like they were part of the same movie, but after this shakeup, I don't know how to feel about these last 20 minutes. I can't get invested in the dramatic moments since they're sandwiched in between jokey scenes, and the comedic moments seem in poor taste because they're sandwiched between serious scenes. It's probably not as bad as I'm making it sound, but the last third just doesn't feel as natural as the rest of the movie, making it really hard to be invested in Todd's struggles when his ex shows up. Oh yeah, Todd's a part of this movie too, isn't he? You see what I mean about too many characters to follow? There's so many arcs, he gets swallowed up in this subway of subplots and becomes just another face in the crowd. If it wasn't for the first scene, I wouldn't even know he was the main character. He's like Heather from Killers. Both are the main focus, but the camera refuses to focus on them. I can forgive this movie more since, again, it's meant to be a casual experience-based movie, but I do have to question, why try for a main character at all? It's not like Lost in Translation or Clerks, where the leads are clearly established and we see the rest of the movie through their experiences. Todd just joins the partygoers and we're shown so many guests we forget he exists. Just have the movie focus on the party, start with them getting to the party, have the audience fill in the gaps as it goes. That way, the movie's not creating artificial importance for Todd, and the audience can follow his arc the same way they follow any of the guests. You know, instead of something, 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 I exist, something, 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 I'm still here, something, 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 my ex has shown up, my arc is complete, and there's still 30 minutes of this movie, something, 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 squirrel! Let them stand out or let them blend into the crowd. Don't try it both ways. The acting in this movie is... It's not good, but at the same time, how mad can I get at a movie where the actors aren't supposed to act? They're supposed to be casual, act like regular people, roleplay as partygoers while hanging out at a party. We're not talking Godfather levels of effort here. And that might be the problem. While the actors are just being partygoers, it's surprisingly convincing. But when they actually have to act, it's...
So you admit it.
I never denied it.
Just stop being a coward and say it.
Well, you don't want me to say it.
a bad night at community theater. However, there is something to be said about the overall natural feel of the performances. I believe they're partygoers, that they were invited to a party and they're just standing around talking and having fun. And that's likely the mindset they worked with minimal input from the director. They were probably just told what type of character they would play and what situation they'd be in and set free in front of the camera, and they filmed around them. The result is a very convincing party, one that you want to be at, with characters you'd like to interact with and situations you may find yourself relating to. These people may have little to no acting experience, but they sure know how to have fun. We get a couple familiar faces in the crowd, with some first and last for most of the cast. Our kinda sorta main character Todd is played by the film's writer and director, and the writer of previous David Michael Latt collaboration Sorority House Party, Steve Taylor. According to the film's IMDb page, they were originally going to have a more experienced actor for this part, but he backed out at the last minute and Steve stepped in for the role. I don't know if the original guy would have done better, but I think Steve sells it as the shy, neurotic, nerdy type, so that was the right call.
Is it so much to ask that she just pine away in a convent for the rest of her life? I mean, 4 years with me, and now suddenly she's running cross-country to get married. They haven't even been together for 10 months. By the way, thanks for hovering around me like a flock of slathering vultures. Maybe I should have told her I was a podiatrist cum laude.
Pediatrician?
Glad you set that straight. Paul the fiancé, Paul the proctologist. Good for you. Boy, when we were together, she always had some ailment or another. It was always, honey bear, I have cramps, or dumpling, muffin needs your Vicodin. Good thing we had an all-night drugstore a block away.
Kim Little's back, in a much smaller role than her last two performances, mixing things up by playing a conservative character named Mary Ellen. And I had to look her name up since I don't remember a single thing she does. She's the friend of the woman who comes out at the end, she brushes off Todd and one of the nerds at one point, and men keep trying to look up her skirt, but I couldn't tell you a single thing she does, or even what her point of this movie is. She's not even giving anything funny to say, which is what made her past performances so enjoyable. Oh, except for this line. This was funny.
Okay, let's do the math. 5 ounces of pepper spray plus 3 warnings equals 1 blind geek.
Gotcha!
This time, all the funny lines are given to Kat, the party host. And yeah, the actress, Susan Wright, delivers them perfectly as the hostess who micromanages the party while trying to have a good time herself.
Excuse me, ma'am. Me and my buddy were just wondering if you might have some filthy pornography to spare.
No, sir. I'm sorry, but we're using all of our filthy pornography right now. So why don't you come on in and get liquored up? Hey! You're good-looking and intelligent with no perceivable body odor. What's up?
Besides, I got a gun full of fun. I'm licensed to Pierce. Rick said he wanted a nipple ring.
Rick said that. Well, maybe only after you give him that sphincter stud. Do you see any care in this eye?
No.
Well, there's just as much in this one.
Kind of sad her filmography only lasts 2 more movies. Rachel Latt is back as Terry, the date rape victim, and I still don't know if she and David Michael Latt are related, and Scott Carson cameos as Paul, the fiancé of Todd's ex Nancy. And we must bid a fond farewell to these actors, because this is the final asylum film for both of them. Let's hope wherever they are now they've found their true calling. Whatever it might be. Most of the rest of the cast is comprised of unknowns and one-shots, but a couple of names did go on to long careers in the film industry. Shay Morgan Brooke, who plays Bryce the horny guy, has an extensive resume in the transportation department, a service he seems to perform to this day. Lauren Pasternak, who plays Angela, the sister of one of the partygoers, has served as second assistant director on some notable films. Lee Abbott, who plays Brian the gay guy, is an accomplished chef and has produced and hosted several cooking shows. Tracy Ruggiero, who has a cameo as a stranded woman, is a seasoned stunt person, performing and directing stunts as recently as this year. And in terms of acting, Chris Flanders, who played Nick the betting man, has spent the last 25 years featured in... stuff. Lots of stuff. Oh, but he had a role in LA Noire, making him the second actor feature so far to be tied to both The Asylum and that game. I'm always impressed to see people who started out attached to nothing to go on to have long and fruitful careers. Who knows? If I hone my skills, in 10 years, maybe I'll work my way up to Idris Elba's second assistant's gopher's roommate's garbage man's personal back scratcher. For whenever the first one slips behind the couch. Once again, the technicals aren't that great, but just in the zero budget first try, we didn't quite understand what we were doing way that doesn't allow for much entertaining critique. There are painfully amateur aspects present, but nothing uniquely bad that we haven't already seen before. For example, the picture quality. Just look at it. Grainy, muddy, low-quality film with clear defects and a terrible DVD transfer that I'm pretty sure is a second-generation transfer from its VHS. It's the worst visual quality we've seen since Vampires vs. Zombies, right down to how they forgot to clean off the lens for some shots. Just how do you even get the... But considering this is a cheap, down-to-earth, grungy movie that's supposed to look ugly, why even bother complaining? Vampires vs. Zombies tried way too hard to emulate monster movies that required a budget and embarrassed themselves in the process. This just looks and plays like someone grabbed the first camera within arm's length and taped their neighbor's party, so it's not even worth the effort to get mad at. It is what it is, and that's all it is. The audio editing is pretty good, in that I could hear everyone's dialogue without having to constantly fiddle with the volume knob on the speakers, and they know how to balance the audio so the music wasn't constantly overpowering the dialogue. Some instances of echo, depending on where they were shooting, but nowhere near the level of some of the Asylum's later productions. There was the occasional glitch where they cut the microphone off too soon, but for the most part, they're barely noticeable. Except for this one glaring moment where they clearly cut off the actress to hide the sound of an oncoming car.
Hey, I don't feel like talking right now.
And seeing as how she's off screen, they couldn't re-record that line. Why? The editing's fine. The lighting's fine. The credits either look like they were handwritten or done with a generic word processor and generic fonts, and the standard indie film trademark. And the soundtrack isn't bad. Again, this is really where the movie shows its age and attitude, as we get a lot of independent alternative and grunge rock acts taking up nearly the entire film's background ambiance. And a lot of them try to sound like more popular bands from around that time. So you get songs that sound like Green Day, and some you swear were from Primus, some Incubus, Beck, Pearl Jam, R.E.M., maybe a trace of Nirvana. It's eclectic, it's lively, it fits the period and tone. I like it. This is yet another movie where the soundtrack is arguably better than the movie itself. The Batman Forever of indie films, if you will. Now this is where I usually point out the movie's most distinguishing feature right before I wrap up, saving the best for last, so to speak. Whether it's a standout performance, an artistic touch, a phenomenally botched technical aspect, or the movie's unbelievably bad ending that would be a crime not to spoil. And for this movie, I got nothing. It's one of the most down-to-earth, no-frills movies I've ever seen, so there's not one aspect that deserves a pedestal above everything else. So I could just forgo this section entirely. Or I could bring up that in the end credits, the movie credits its additional music to Billy West. Wait a minute, like that Billy West? Bugs Bunny, Fry, Stimpy, Doug, Red M&M, Slimer, Woody Woodpecker Billy West? Probably, though nothing on the IMDb page confirms it. Normally I shouldn't be blown away by a voice actor's credit, but considering how cheap and obscure this movie is, it's like sitting through one of those YouTube Kids videos and finding out at the end that they got Jim Cummings to say a single word. I'm so in shock to see a name I actually recognize that I am legitimately curious if it was actually that Billy West, and if he knowingly contributed to the soundtrack. Though we'll probably never find out. Even if it was the Billy West we know, I'd be surprised if he remembers anything to do with this movie. So, to paraphrase another character he's well known for voicing, that's all you get, folks! This movie is specifically targeted. It's a very non-mainstream movie, absolutely not something you'd expect to see in theaters. Sure, similar movies have garnered mainstream attention, hence that list earlier, but those had a unique theme and an obvious budget so they could grab some well-known names and or bring their locations to life. This is just a bunch of people at a party, and it doesn't try to be anything but. That said, I did enjoy it, and I'd go so far as to say it's one of the more entertaining asylum movies I've seen. Sure, it's slow, a bit of a mess with how many plots it juggles, and some of the technical aspects are pitiful, but the characters are likable, the arcs are interesting, the soundtrack sounds great, and I love how much fun this party is. I want to be at this party, talking to these characters, having these same experiences. I'd say if I was a party person, which I'm not. I guess I just like movies like this, these low-key anti-movies that rely on improv and quirky characters more than story. And if you're also that kind of person, you'll probably like this movie just fine too. I mean, when the co-creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles calls this the greatest party movie ever, what is there to argue? Find a copy, check it out, and party on, dudes! Actually, why didn't we get any metalheads at this party? Well, we took a break from David Michael Latt having hands-on control of a movie, but it wouldn't be long before he sat back in the director's chair to bring us another shot of the thriller. What did that result in? We'll talk about it next time. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon and help me create even more content like this. It's only $1 to get early access to my videos, and only $5 gets you a credit at the end of each of those videos, with higher tiers offering these and even more perks. And as you help me reach certain goals, I have super special content lined up for all of you. Head on over and check out my Patreon today, and I'll see you next time.